One of our friends, Lisa Rake, has a question. She wants to know, she has a friend who is 61 and had been in very good health. She experienced a very sad life in the past few years, and now she's been diagnosed with lung cancer. How can she help out?
So first of all, this is a very difficult issue, and I don't think a logical answer to such a question is needed. When someone's going through suffering, the thing that is mostly needed is not an intellectual understanding of why it's happened or why it's happening. And even if there is an explanation and it could be explained, that's not what people need. When people go through very painful experiences in life, what they really need is for someone to be there for them and for them to know that they're not alone. So I think the most important thing for any person that's going through suffering that you know, and any person that's going through hardships in their lives, is to try to be there, to be present for them. That's the most important thing. And that itself alleviates, that itself is comforting, to know that we're not alone in our suffering and there are people that experience it with us. In terms of what to speak to this person and how to give them any sense of comfort, in life, every person lives their amount of time that they have to live in this world, and everyone experiences ups and downs. But one of the tragedies of life is that we always judge our life on the immediate experience that we're having in this present, in the very present moment. Let's say, I'll give you an analogy of this. Let's say, for example, a person is eating an ice cream. Let's say you enjoy ice cream. You eat an ice cream, and at the end, when you come to the end of the ice cream cone, you find at the end, you find a bug. And there was a bug in your ice cream. How would you experience the last 10 minutes that you enjoyed eating the ice cream? Most people would say that once they find the bug, their whole past experience that they enjoyed becomes null and void. Because they're disgusted, and how could they have eaten an ice cream that had a bug inside it? And the truth is, it's not a good way to live life, because we have to live life with an understanding that wherever we're going through is the experience that we're going through, and we have to be present in that. But our life actually has a full narrative, and we have to be grateful for the things that we had in our life. And we can always look at our life in the immediate moment of what we are experiencing, or we can actually look at the life and our entire life and say, it's true that maybe now we're going through a hard time and now we're suffering, and it's very painful, and God should give everyone the correct health that they need. But we have to also look at our full life, and sometimes the blessings that happen at a certain period of time is things that to be grateful for. So we have to try to look at the full experiences of our life, and always remember things that happen in our lives, and be grateful for those things. And the more grateful we are, and the more joy we try to bring into our experiences, even if we're presently suffering, the more we open ourselves up to experiencing positivity in our life. The vessel to receive goodness in our life is through having a positive attitude and through having trust and faith that things will actually get better.
Charles has a question. He said, why did the rabbis phrase the morning blessings as exclusionary? Shelo asani isha, or eved, or goy. That God had created us, that God did not create us as a slave or as one of the nations. Instead of in the positive, that God had made me a Jew, or
Right.
God had made me a free person.
That's a fair question. To be who we are is our choice, which means that there's a part of us that there was a Hasidic master that said, the Kotzker Rabbi once said, that if I am me because I'm not you, and you're you because you're not you, then I'm not me and you're not you. But if I'm me because I'm me, and you're you because you're you, then I'm me and you're you. Which means sometimes we have to define ourselves by what I'm not. And that is our natural birth. Who we are is we're not somebody else. That's the first distinction. But who we actually are in the positive, that I am this, that's up to our choice. In the beginning of creation, in the story of the creation, the verse in the Torah says, Nasa Adam Itzalmeinu, let us create man in our image. This is God is talking to the creation and said, let us create. And the famous question is, who's the us? Who's the plural? What does it mean, let us? And one way to understand this is that the Creator is actually talking to His creation, talking to us and saying, let us create man. I'm going to give you the tools, but you have to actually create yourself. I'm going to say you're not this, but who you are in the positive is up to our choice. We choose to live our life, and based on the choices that we choose to live our life, that's how we create ourselves. So the negative is just saying I'm not that. That's the foundation. I am not this and I'm not that and not the other thing. But in terms of the positive, who I am, that's up to my choice. I have to create those choices in my life to make the person that I want to become. I am not X, Y, and Z. That's the basic limitation of who I'm not. That's the basic parameters of who I'm not. But who I actually am in the positive, that's already up to my choice, how I live my life. If I am not born a slave, that's just, I'm not born a slave. That's a fact. Do I live freely? That's my choice. If I choose to live like a free man or free woman, then I can make that, I can say to my honestly that I'm actually a free person. So we say the blessing in the morning, we're saying we're not created, for example, as a slave, but am I free? Now that's my choice. And therefore, I can't bless the Creator for creating me free because the Creator doesn't create me free. The Creator just created me not a slave, but to be a free person, I have to make that choice. So that's the positive. The positive is actually our choice that we create for ourselves. Yeah. Oh.
Julia Johnson has a question. She says, hi, Rabbi.
Yeah.
Question. What is the explanation of Torah on witchcraft? Why does it happen, and how does one fight against it? Thanks in advance.
Witchcraft is another word for that is called the koach hatuma, the power of the impurity. And the world was created in a dichotomy, which means that there are two elements in creation. There's one, the positive aspect of creation, which is the creative aspect. And every moment the creation is continuously being created. But since every moment there's a renewal of creation, which is the element of chesed, of kindness, of compassion, of giving, of light, the other moment, as if, is the moment of destruction. The world is being constantly destroyed and recreated. It's like an inhale and an exhale. It's movement. The movement is fluctuating. It's constantly this rhythm of chesed, kindness, flow, light, and then the retraction of gvura, restriction, return of the light. The task of the human being is to further the light in this world, to further the openness. Tahara, which means purity in Hebrew, which is the opposite of tuma, comes from the word tahar, getem shemaim latar, which means like to be open and transparent and light. Purity is light. Impurity is sasum. Tuma comes from the word sasum, which means to constrict, to hold back, to retain. The flow of life is to continuously give and further life, further light, further movement, further love. That's the power of the holy. There is innate within the creation, because it's a continuous process of recreating, there's also an element within creation that's the gvur, the element of constriction, of holding back, of limitation, which is the power of tuma. And there are two paths. There's a path of light and a path of darkness, as it were. We are created in the image of the Creator to create, which means to give, to continue the process of giving, to further the giving in this world, to be more loving, to bring more light into this world. But there's also a possibility, because in the innate nature within the creation, of this element of tuma, of gevura, of restriction, of holding back, of limitation. The power of witchcraft and the power of all koach hatuma, all powers of impurity, is from that potential within creation, which is destructive potential within the creation. We have a choice in life. We can either destroy or create. We can create the most wonderful world for ourselves and for the planet, and we can also destroy. That's part of our free choice. We can connect with the chesed element, which is the giving element, the giving and the furthering, or we can connect with the gvur, which is the restricting and the holding back with the creation or the destruction. And that's the koach hatuma, that's the power of the impurity. The way we shut ourselves off from this power is by literally closing ourselves, which means there's a phrase in the Talmud that says, "Man de kapit kapdinan loy," someone that subscribes to these types of forces, these forces have power and sway over them, which means that if we don't and we protect ourselves and we say, I am unaffected by these negative forces in this world, then you're actually unaffected by them. And if we do more positive in this world and more connected with Kedusha, with holiness and purity and light and love and furthering the creation, that's how we stay away from these powers and they have no effect on ourselves. So it's really, it's a mindset and it's a way of life that affects it.
One of our anonymous friends just had an interesting conversation with her mother-in-law, in which her mother-in-law told her that her husband had been conceived on Yom Kippur and was born on the fast of the 17th of Tammuz. Her husband now believes that he is cursed, and he thinks that there's consequences for the fact that he was conceived and born on such what is classically thought of as painful days. Is there such a thing that being born on a mourning day can have any negative effect or impact on that person and their soul?
There's two elements to this question. First of all, it was not your choice. This is done by your parents. But there's something, the Talmud, the Gemara, the sages in the Talmud at the end of Yuma talk about this idea of why on Yom Kippur a person shouldn't have physical relationships, spouses shouldn't have physical intimacy with each other, because you're supposed to be in a state of affliction, but more in a state of transcendence, of connection with that type of element, that part of creation process. But if something happens on its own, which means like something that happens in an accident, and a person lives throughout the year, the Talmud says this is proof that this person will have a very good life. Which means like this, that there are certain things in this world that in order for us to connect with them, we have to refrain. In order to connect with the energy of Yom Kippur, we have to refrain from physical intimacy. In order to connect with the energy of the 17th of Tammuz, we have to fast. But then there are things that happen from a place that's beyond our control. This shows that it's a revelation of something that's actually higher than our participation, which means like this, that all these days, like the 17th of Tammuz, will eventually be transformed into days of joy. It's just the way they're refracted, the way they're revealed in this world in the present moment is that it's a negative day. But eventually these days will actually become days of joy, days of celebration. And when something happens by an accident, which means not on your level of your free choice, but something that happened to you, despite your free choice, because you had no participation in this, you were just born on that day, I would say it actually reveals even a higher level of your soul and the opposite of cursed, actually even the source of blessing. One of the big proofs for this is that Mashiach himself, the Messiah, is actually born on Tisha B'Av, on the greatest day of mourning, because to be born on that day means that something that's beyond your control is being revealed on that day, and that's like the essence of the day that's beyond our participation. So I would say that not only are you not cursed, but I think you're actually blessed.
Our friend Avigdor has what could be probably thought of as a classic question,
yeah.
but an important question. He says, how should a person deal with religious doubt?
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
You know, people have this image that for a religious person, a committed person to Judaism, there's no questions, and for someone that's not a committed person, there's no answers. As if to say that when you dedicate your life Torah and to mitzvahs, you have all the answers, and if you don't, you have only your questions. And the truth is that it's a very shallow and primitive understanding of Judaism. Judaism welcomes questions. And the reason why it welcomes questions is because faith, if we believe in the God that we believed when you're 10 years old and you're 40, then that's very immature. Because in every other area in our life, the things that we understood when we're 10 and the things that we understand when we're 40 is completely different. We understand the way the world works differently, the way we understand ourselves differently. Everything evolves. And the truth is the same thing also with our faith. Faith has to be a constant state of evolvement. We can't have the same faith that we had when we're 10 at 40. And sometimes the way to break out to a higher understanding of faith, to reach a deeper understanding of faith, is actually through the doubt. The doubt, the suffix, opens you up to higher understanding. If you never challenge yourself, or you're never challenged, and sometimes this happens on its own, if you're never challenged in your faith and your understanding of the way that things work, then you never grow in your faith. So doubt has to be welcomed as a tool and a springboard that allows us to have deeper faith. One of the greatest, deepest spiritual levels of Keter in the Kabbalistic structure is called Resha D'Lois Yada, is Radla. It's an aspect of Kesser, which is that it's the head that does not know. Because the not knowing, the biggest tragedy of life is when we say we know everything. When we are a Yedua, when we say we know everything. Actually, tying this back to the previous question, which is about witchcraft, it says that the Balak and Bilam were the two great magicians, great black magicians in the Torah, in the Bible. And it says that Balak, the Zohar says that that Balak received his prophecy through a bird, and the bird was called Yedua, it is known. Which means the definition of impurity is when you say, I know everything. When you say it's Yedua, I know, it's finished, the product is ended, that's already a klipa, that's already concealment, because it doesn't allow you to grow. The Ein Sof is infinite, and our understanding of God has to be infinite. And as we grow, we have to constantly challenge ourselves to grow to the higher perspective. So therefore, suffix, doubt, has to be welcomed, knowing that this doubt will break us into a higher and force us into a higher level of faith. So instead of pushing aside the doubt, take the doubt, go to the deeper, and allow that to bring you to a higher understanding of what your faith is.
Our friend Miriam Cowles has a question. Do you believe there's a place in Judaism for children of Jewish fathers and Gentile mothers? This practice is taking place across some other synagogues and movements across America, and she wants to know how the Rav would react.
This is a challenging question indeed.
Yeah.
If the situation is, every situation is a little bit different, but I would say that if the situation is in a way that the two parents are on a good relationship with each other, and they have children that they're raising culturally Jewish, I think it's probably an obligation for rabbis to reach out to this to the woman, to the mother, who is raising her children Jewish, which means she has a Jewish home, and she's committed to Judaism on some level. Maybe she hasn't yet gone through a process of conversion halachically because she hasn't been privy to this type of information and what it means. I think it's an obligation, if the situation is in a way that the relationship is a solid relationship between spouses, and the children are raised Jewish, and the family is raising their children Jewish as a Jewish identity, I think it's actually important to reach out to them and try to facilitate some type of process of a more deeper commitment to Judaism in a halachic way.
We have a few more questions, but we encourage anyone who's watching to ask any questions that they might have. One more question from a friend named Vali. According to Kabbalah, Vali has heard that every person is created with a soulmate.
Yeah.
Vali is now 33 years old and still can't find his soulmate. his or her soulmate. Why?
Everyone is born with their soulmate. Every soul has a counterpart. But sometimes, in order to find something outside of you, you have to first find yourself. You can't know what your soulmate is and who the person you're supposed to live your life with if you don't know who you are. I'm not saying this person is this way, but a lot of people are very confused about their identity, who they are, how they want to live their lives. And sometimes the person that they're supposed to be with is actually right in front of them. And I think part of this culture is that we live in a very throwaway culture. Everything is expendable. Everything is recyclable, and we don't take permanent. We don't take seriously our identity. Everything is in flux. Everything is in constant change, and we have to ask ourselves, like, what it is really the goal of our life. What is the arch mission and purpose of why I'm alive? What do I want to achieve in this world? How do I see my life unfolding? Of course, you can't know all the details, but what is the general sense of what my existence is all about? And I think when people will find themselves, it'll be helpful to find others, because you can't find something outside of yourself if you don't know who you are. It has to be a match to your personality, and you have to know who your personality is.
Just want to say, Vali, good luck to you. I still believe.
No, we all believe.
We all believe. Yosef Eliyahu, our friend, another friend of ours, has a question. He's heard a lot of different aspects of Kabbalah, and some of them are hard for him to accept.
Yeah.
Specifically, the practice of gematria, using the aleph bays, the alphabet of the Hebrew language, as numbers, and no trichonim, which the rabbi can explain what it is, because even though I have these, I don't know what that is, which seem to be done at random. Other rituals also seem random to him and seem as though they might come from foreign cultures, like the practice of cutting a child's hair at 3, the upsharing, or keys that are baked into challah at specific times. Is there a way to separate what he calls the wheat from the chaff?
It's a very loaded question. This is a big question. I mean, there are certain things that our sages recognized as what Chazal call paparoyas l'chachma, like added spices to wisdom. One of them is Netroikin, which is letter exchanging, or gematria, which is number equivalents of letters, which our sages understood is a true and valid expression of an idea, but something that only comes as a spice to an idea. It can't actually be the original idea. Unfortunately, people that don't understand this art create a whole teaching based on gematria, based on number equivalences, which is incorrect. There was a famous Sephardic Kabbalist and wise man, the Chida, said that if you don't know how to play with numeric values, you can get that the word Moses, has the same numeric value as Kel Shakai, which is one of the names of Hashem, and also has Elikim Acherim, foreign gods, the same name, which means you have to know what you're talking about. So there has to be like an understanding of the connection between these two ideas. And then there's the paparois l'chachma, which is like the added spices that show the equivalency of these two concepts. And that's one thing. Now there's a mix-up together with upsharing, with the cutting of the hair and putting a key in the challah, these are things that over time, there's certain practices that evolved that is not part of the original teachings of Chazal, which means it's more, we can align them more with minhagim, with the customs of times. But it's really a choice of how you relate to it. I believe that any custom that was been accepted by Klal Yisrael, by the people of Israel collectively, if they're not prophets, they're the children of prophets, which means that there's a collective, prophetic, subconscious to Klal Yisrael, to the people of Israel, that when we accept something as a custom, there is deep inherent truth to it, even if it was adopted and it was taken from other cultures, perhaps, possibly. But once it was accepted and became part of our tradition, and again, you don't have to accept it, it's just a custom, But I believe that there's inherent deep value to it. In fact, I actually wrote a book on Upshurn to explain the Kabbalistic understanding of what here is and why we got here at 3 years old, etc. Because I think there's depth to it. So I think there's an idea that when something has been accepted by the collective, the prophetic imagination, the prophetic insights of Klal Yisrael is very much alive. The people of it is very much alive. And when we collectively accept something, it's almost as it was given into prophecy. And therefore, we can read deeper understandings and deeper meanings of these practices. Again, you don't have to accept it. It's just custom. But I think there's depth to it. And when you see a custom that's been accepted, I think you have to ask yourself why. What does it represent? And it's always something deeper. It's not superficial and it's not just arbitrary. There's some deeper truths and deeper symbolisms and deeper metaphors that it evokes and arouses and creates different synergies of energy. And that's just a matter of whether you want to go deeper into things or not. And that's your choice.
First of all, Vali was watching. She
Yeah.
wants to say thank you for the message.
Okay. I didn't actually mean it for her that she has to find herself. I'm just giving a general understanding of the way things have to work. But everyone has to find themselves.
There's a question from our friend Moshe
Yeah.
Isaacson.
Yeah.
Moshe says are there any meditative practices outside of Judaism that are permissible for a Jew to engage in?
Chochma yesh b'goyin talmim. Wisdom among the nations is a truth. I just don't know why, if a person is a committed Jew, why they would have to search outside of Judaism for practices. I think in our tradition, in the Jewish tradition, there are many, many Jewish practices of meditation, and I think it varies from all different types, and I think it probably encompasses all types of meditation practices. Having said that, I think if you take a practice that's very non-connected to any type of idol worship, and it's very simple, like a breathing technique or something, just to calm you down, then it shouldn't be a problem. I just think that you can actually find these practices within Judaism, and why search somewhere else when you can find it yourself? And if you say that it's difficult to find, so search more.
Is there anywhere that you can recommend Moshe to search?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote like 5 books on meditation, so you can start with those. One is Breathing and Quieting the Mind, which talks about breathing. The other one is Visualization, Imagery, and Meditation in Judaism. There's a lot of books, and this is one of the things that I'm trying to do, is reveal these teachings to make it accessible.
Moshe, if you want to send us we will send you a message with the links of the Rav's books, and we encourage you to look at them. They have some great material there. Charlotte Chava Hatter just asked the question just now. Please can you advise as to what the best pathway would be for studying Hebrew letters in depth, and could the Rav explain more about this subject? The only comprehensive books that she found from Rabbi Ginsburg.
The foundation of this idea is that the creation of the world occurs through a vibration. Similar to the idea of string theory, but on a metaphysical level, which means that everything begins with the vibration. Vayomer Hashem, or Hashem said let there be light, and there was light, which means that the vibrational formation of these 3 letters, Aleph, Vav, Resh, creates actually light. And everything is a vibration. There's a spiritual vibration. The spiritual vibration gives rise to a physical vibration. The vibration is energy. Energy becomes matter. So we look at a table. Shulchan, Shin Lamed Ches Nun. These letters of Shin Lamed Ches Nun, the Hebrew letters, are the building blocks of creation, which means they are the metaphysical vibrational energy resonance that actually gives rise to this physical table. That's why in Hebrew we call things devarim. We call things not things but words, because everything is another vibration. The way it's called in English, incidentally, which let's say for example would be table, that's the achorayim, that's like the backside of that energy, which means we're all relating to the table from a different perspective, and everything is vibrating according to our consciousness. So when we're relating to one way, it's appearing to us as one vibration in its form and its pnim and its internal reality, and when we're relating it from the outside, it's relating to it through its outside. This is the structure of why it's important to understand the Hebrew letters. The primary source for understanding the Hebrew letters would be Sefer Yetzirah. Sefer Yetzirah is the foundational text, one of the most ancient texts in Judaism, a text that we know existed a few thousand years ago, attributed to Avraham Avinu. And over there it talks about the letters, and it divides the letters into three groups, the 3 modern letters and the 12 simple letters, the 7 double letters, and it speaks about the different letters and their energy, their frequencies. So a primary text would be Sefer Yetzirah. Also, from the earlier time period, there's also a book that's called, a sefer that's called Oasis Rabbi Akiva, the letters of Rabbi Akiva, which also explains the letters. There's a small part in the Gemara in Shabbos Kuvav Kuvhei that talks about this idea of the letters and speaks also about the letters. And the best way to learn about the letters is to go back to the original sources. So Sefer Yetzirah, a little bit of the Gemara, and the Oasis, the letters of Rabbi Akiva would be the 3 good sources. There's also some earlier books of Mekubalim, of Kabbalists that wrote on this topic, especially the Kabbalists that were connected to explaining Sefer Yetzirah, which flows through, I don't know who this person is and how familiar they are with text, but it has to do with Hasidic Ashkenaz, with the pious of Germany, which they talk a lot about the letters, Sefer Rekeach, and Lazim Germais, that school, or Abalafia, that's that school of thought. But I would say if you really want to get into the letters and you have the possibility, I would say to go to the original sources.
The same lady who asked the very good question just now, first of all, just wants to say that she's read the Rav's books on meditation and she enjoyed them very much. And second of all, she has heard that there might be an issue with women learning Sefer Yetzirah. She was told that there might be an issue. She wants to know if the Rav thinks that that's an issue.
All these things, like this. It used to be that people didn't read the newspaper. I shouldn't say people that were committed to Yiddishkeit. They didn't read the newspaper, didn't watch television, didn't watch movies. We weren't involved in all the shtusim in this world. And therefore, there were certain texts that they stayed away from for Kabbalistic reasons. Today, we're so inundated with so much shtusim, so much garbage, and so much nonsense, that they say that you're not going to learn a sacred text because it's not appropriate. These things are... I would say it's better definitely to learn Sefer Yetzirah than to read the New York Times.
Charlotte wants to say thank you very much.
Or Harry Potter, whatever everyone's reading. Okay.
Charlotte wants to say thank you to the Rabbi very much for such an amazing answer.
All right, I appreciate it.
Evelyn Volsey has a question.
Yeah.
She says, there are many people who come down to this world and they feel an unexplained connection to Judaism since an early age. Do these people have Jewish souls?
The short answer is yes. And the longer answer is that always, this is the meta history of Judaism, is that always after great catastrophes, and certainly we're living through the time period of right after the Holocaust and after great trauma, there are souls that Jewish souls, and I don't want to explain this because it's complicated, but there are different types of souls, which means souls that belong to the Jewish family, enter into non-Jewish bodies for the purpose of them to return back to the Jewish fold and to enter with non-Jewish bodies that don't carry the trauma that Jewish bodies carry. Because after going through tremendous trauma, genetically we carry people that are born Jewish to Jewish parents and their grandparents were Jewish and went through the war and went through the Holocaust. They actually carry trauma in their genes, in their physical makeup. And that trauma dampens things and makes things very sour and painful. And people that Jewish souls choose, this is a whole process how this works, but sometimes Jewish souls, which means souls that belong to Jews in previous lives, will enter into non-Jewish bodies for periods of time. So when they return back to Judaism, they'll actually bring healthy genes that are not affected by the trauma to create a sort of balance within Klal Yisrael. You have to explore this deeper. Another person has to really make this decision on their own. They have to really know whether Judaism is actually really who they are, whether Jewish is really who they are. But a lot of times it is. It turns out to be this way.
Davida Bar has a question. She wants to ask the rabbi, where can a woman find a place for serious Kabbalah study in Israel or the U.S.? Before the rabbi answers, I want to answer the same way that Moshe Isaacson answered right after, and that is right here at Iyun, or with the books that the Rav has written if you want to read the books.
Right.
But there are women's classes that go on here at
Correct.
Iyun. But,
It's a good question. I'm not familiar with the landscape well. I'm sure in Israel there are places to study. There has to be. I can't tell you, but you have to ask the DovBer, the people that know these things. You could probably go to Tzfaz. You could find a place to learn. I'm sure. For sure.
That is going to conclude our live question and answers for the first session. Thank you everyone for submitting the questions beforehand. Thank you for those who submitted them live. We want to thank, of course, most importantly, the rabbi for giving us his time. And for anyone who wants to have further questions, if they have any answered, please submit them and we will try to get them answered as soon as possible. And we will see you next time.
God willing.